Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. As-salatu was-salam ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Inshallah, in today's talk about the life of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu an, we will be covering, we'll pick it up from where we left off last week. Last week we talked about the selection of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu an as the first Khalifa after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And we talked about his how he was elected as the Khalifa, and also we talked about the first speech that, or the, if you want to call it, inaugural speech, as we are hearing this term all the time nowadays. In that inaugural speech, he gave very specific points regarding how he will be ruling afterwards as well. And inshallah, in today's talk, I will be covering the subject in regards to the Pledge of Allegiance, or the bay'ah that was given to Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu an to become the Khalifa. I will just talk a little bit about what does it mean and the place of bay'ah in Islam. And it is different than any other system of life which is out there besides Islam. And then I'll talk about the sources of legislation in the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu an, and what does it mean by the obedience of a ruler, and what kind, some in regards to the ruler, what are the rights of the citizen, and also that how Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu an actually showed from his actions that his speech was accompanied by the action. So these are the few topics we'll try to cover inshallah today as time permits, and we'll see if we can cover all of them. If not, then we'll stop at a good point inshallah. So as we talked about last week, that Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh was elected as a Khalifa through the bay'ah. And not only that Abu Bakr was elected as a Khalifa through the bay'ah, but even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam became the Hakim in Medina through the bay'ah given to him by the people of Yathrib at that time, or afterwards the city was named after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Madinatul Nabi. So the city of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we talk about the bay'ah, Ibn Khaldun, in his Muqaddimah, he says that the bay'ah, which is the covenant one takes to obey the one who has authority over the people. So that's what it means by that you are making a covenant with the people. And another place is defined as a bay'ah is to make a pledge to apply the teachings of Islam. So that's what the bay'ah is about, that the ruler has been elected and he will rule by Islam. And this is how Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh was elected as the Khalifa. And there are many ahadith which are used by the ulama regarding the obligation of the bay'ah, and the bay'ah is the one that makes the ruler as the ruler. Like one of the hadith which is reported by Imam Muslim in his Sahih Muslim, and he mentioned the hadith from Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu an, and he said, سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من خلع يدا من طاعات لقي الله يوم القيامة ولا حجة له. That the hadith says, Rasulullah said, he who throws himself out of the obedience will meet Allah on the day of resurrection without having any kind of a hujjah, any kind of a proof for himself. And the hadith continues on, وَمَنْ مَاتَ وَلَيْسَ فِي عُنُقِهِ بَيْعَةٌ مَاتَ مِيتَةً جَاهِلِيَّةً. Now this hadith, this part of the hadith is very important for all of us to remember, inshallah, from this talk, because this is important. We are not just studying the life of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh so we can think of the stories that we are hearing about. No, there is lessons for us to learn and implement in our lives, and this is what we learn from the Hayatul Sahaba as well, because they were showing how to live the life according to Islam, and that's what Abu Bakr Siddiq's life was about as well. Of course, we all we follow them when they are following the Quran, so, and we'll talk about that as well. So now this part of the hadith that says that مَنْ مَاتَ وَلَيْسَ فِي عُنُقِهِ بَيْعٌ mata mitatan jahiliya, that whosoever dies in the state that he does not have the bay' or the oath of allegiance on his neck, then he dies as the death of jahiliyyah. And it's a very strong statement, because this kind of a death, when you talk about some action is linked to the death, it means we don't have choice to, or we don't have a chance to even ask for forgiveness from Allah Azza wa Jal, or ask for tawbah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this is referring to the death is the death of jahiliyyah. So to have a Khalifa to give the bay' to is an obligation. So you have to have the bay'ah on your neck. So that shows that to have the Khalifa to implement the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also a must. And similarly, there are other hadith that talks about not only that the bay'ah has to be there, but the bay'ah has to be given to one Khalifa also. Like the hadith which is also transmitted by a Muslim, that says that إذا بُعِيَ لِخَلِيفَتَيْن فَاقْتُلُوا الْآخِرَ مِنْهُمَا. The hadith says that if the two Khalifas are given the bay'ah, then the latter one, the one that you have given the bay'ah to after the first one, he should be killed. Now, or he should be fought for. One of the understandings says should be fought, or others say they should be killed. As another hadith in the similar manner, it talks about, it says, مَنْ بَايَ عِمَامًا فَأَعْطَاهُ صفقة يده وثمرة قلبه فليطع إن استطاع فإن جاء آخر ينازع فاضربوا عن الآخر. So now here the hadith is saying, if anyone swears allegiance to an imam, giving him his hand in ratification and sincere agreement in his heart, and he must obey him if he as much as he can, and then if another comes and contends with him, cut off the other one's head. So see, the other one's neck actually. So both the hadith are reported by Muslim. So that shows it's not only the bay'ah to be given to one only, and that is the bay'ah that brings the ruler to rule over them by Islam, and it has to be one ruler. Ummah cannot be divided into multiple countries or regions or whatsoever. And as far as the ruler goes, it has to be one united ruling through one person. Now, so that's what the bay'ah was. And now, bay'ah is given for what though? That's another aspect to understand. Bay'ah is given to be ruled by Islam. Okay. Now, after Abu Bakr Siddiq was elected as the Khalifa, and he gave the speech in his inauguration, and he was very clear about that. He said, follow me as long as I am following Allah and His Messenger. And this obedience is only related to following Allah and His Messenger and nothing else. Even following the ruler is because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to follow. Now, when it comes to the legislation in the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, during his acceptance speech, or during his inauguration speech, Abu Bakr Siddiq said, "Ati'uni ma ta'atullah wa rasulah," that obey me as long as I obey and His Messenger. فَإِذَا عَصَيْتَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَلَا تَعَةَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ. And if I disobey Allah and His Messenger, then there is no obedience for me, obedience of me on your neck or on yourself. So, as Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu was very clear from the day one when he became the ruler, that the obedience is about the obedience of Allah and His Messenger. And that shows also that he was referring to the obedience of the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hence, when we talk about the legislation or the sources of legislation that Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh adopted, or that's a must for us to follow, is Quran and the Sunnah. And there are evidences regarding that, as Abu Bakr was saying in his first speech when he became the Khalifah to Rasul, or the successor of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that to follow him as long as he is obeying Allah and his messenger, and there is no obedience if he disobeys Allah and his messenger. Now, Allah Azza wa Jal actually says in the Quran and many places, just for reference, I will quote some, as Allah Azza wa Jal says in Surah An-Nisa, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ لِتَحْكُمَ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ بِمَا أَرَاكَ اللَّهُ وَلَا تَكُنْ لِلْخَائِنِينَ خَصِيمًا. Surely we have descended down, we have revealed down to you the book with the truth, so you rule over the people, between the men by what Allah has shown you. Bima arak Allah, that what Allah has shown you to be ruled by. وَلَا تَكُنْ لِلْخَائِنِينَ خَصِيمًا. This is talking to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So be not a pleader for the treacherous. So don't try to plead for the treacherous, like we see after every 4 years of presidency is over, or 8 years, whenever the president is leaving, he is giving the I forgot the word what it is, but they basically forgive many of the criminals, so there will be no cases against them, and they go by whoever is their close ones, so they will not be hurt by any of the later coming president or the law of the land. So they take them out without any kind of a punishment can be applied to them. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and don't be the one who's be the pleader for the treacherous ones. So this is not even allowed for prophets. So we can imagine that we are definitely not allowed to act like that. Similarly, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَنَحْكُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ وَحَذَّرْهُمْ أَنْ يَفْتِنُوكَ عَنْ بَعْدِ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and so judge, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, among the people by what Allah has revealed over you, and do not follow their vain desire, and beware of them lest they turn you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, far away from what Allah has revealed to you. So that and there are these are the ones that talk about the Kitab Allah, that we have to follow the Kitab of Allah. Similarly, Allah Azza wa Jal also mentioned, and this is what Abu Bakr was referring to follow Allah, that he would follow Allah and his messenger, you should follow him. If he doesn't, you should not. Because Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَمَا أَتَاكَ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. And whatever Allah's messenger has asked you to stay away from or to abstain from, then stay away from it, of forbidden things. Whatever he asks you to do, then follow it. If whatever he asks you to stay away from it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in a very very clear way, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِيمَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. That by your Rabb you cannot be a true believer unless you make Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the one who, as the judge among you, and do not find any kind of resistance in your heart, and submit with the full submission. So that's what about when it comes to the sources of legislation in the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh. Now, when it comes to the obedience part of it, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh very clearly mentioned that the obedience is only about when he was following Allah and his messenger. If he's not following Allah's messenger, then there is no obedience. Okay, and that is for any Muslim who become a leader over the Muslim Ummah, then he is restricted to govern by what Allah revealed. And that's what Abu Bakr was very clear about. And there's a hadith on the very same subject regarding the obedience part that says, لا طاعة في معصية إنما طاعة في المعروف. That the hadith says that there is no ta'ah, there is no obedience in the ma'siyah. In the ma'siyah means in the sin or in the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that obedience is only in the ma'ruf. Ma'ruf means which is acceptable by Islam, something which is good defined by Islam. These are the only things where we do the obedience of the rulers, as Allah Azza wa Jal actually commanded us to obey the rulers. And like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nisa, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul wa ulul amr minkum فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, oh, you who believe, obey Allah and his messenger and the one who Allah has put them in authority from among you, the one who implements the rule of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on you. And if you do if you disagree, with the ruler. Not talking about disagree with Allah and His Messenger. Of course, there is no disagreement with Allah and His Messenger. But if the ruler, you have a disagreement, فَرُدُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, then you return back to Allah and His Messenger and see what Allah and His Messenger. إِن كُنتُمْ تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, if you believe in Allah and the Day of Judgment. So it is very clear that the command is to obey, but the obedience is within the framework of the Quran and the Sunnah. It cannot be outside the Quran, Sunnah, and the ruler cannot ask us to do something haram because there is no obedience in the ma'asiyah. There is no obedience in the sin. Similarly, Allah's hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in other places stresses on the very same subject as one of the hadith says. Rasulullah said, "La ta'ata li makhluqin fi ma'asiyatil khaliq," that there is no obedience of the makhluk, of the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal, in the disobedience of the Khaliq, in the disobedience of the Creator. So that's what means by the Abu Bakr's, when he was referring to that he expected the subject to follow him as long as he's following Allah and His Messenger, and do not obey him if he is not following Quran and Sunnah. Okay, now when it comes to not only that, so ruling is not in the time, even in when Abu Bakr was referring to, that he said, if I do well, Abu Bakr said in his inauguration speech, if I do well, then obey me. If I act wrongly, then correct me also. So another aspect of the ruler is, yes, you cannot follow the haram if he's asking you to do, number one. Second, this is the job of the subject to correct or to hold them accountable, the rulers as well. This is a very simple concept in Islam, that if the ruler is disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he should be warned of, and he should be called back towards Allah and His Messenger. And that's what Abu Bakr said, if I do well, then obey me. If I act wrongly, then correct me. Okay. And when it comes to this aspect of it, that to obey the ruler and do the nasiha to the ruler, or nasiha means when you're correcting him or giving him advice. There's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on this subject that says that ad-deenun nasiha, that Rasulullah said the deen is a nasiha. Nasiha means advice, if you want to roughly translate into, or sincerity. It says qulna liman, so we said to him, to whom? قال لله ولكتابه ولرسوله ولأئمة المسلمين وعامتهم, that it is for Allah, for His book, for His Messenger, for the A'immatul Muslimin, the leaders of the Muslim and the regular people. Now, how is this sincerity and the advice from that perspective? So for Allah and His Messenger, the book is different than, of course, talking about the A'imma and the A'matihim, meaning the leaders and the regular people. When it comes to Allah and His Messenger, what it means by that is, and the sincerity is in that, nasiha is in that we should have the correct belief and we follow the commands of Allah and His Messenger and what is mentioned in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what it means by sincerity. Our sincerity should be that we are obeying, we are following the commands of Allah and His Messenger, which are mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, when it comes to the A'immah, this is an obligation to also give them the advice, correct them if they are wrong. If they are good, they're following the good, taking the right path, yes, we should be supporting them. But if they are taking the wrong path, they should be corrected, and they are not willing to correct, and they are they want to follow other than Islam, then they can be even removed, and the new ruler can be brought in power by the people. Now, unfortunately, today, when we look at the current situation, to raise your voice against the ruler, it becomes a problematic thing to many of us, whether it's in the Muslim lands or otherwise as well. That if you are raising your voices, then either you will be shushed or by different meaning. And sometimes the people's lives is at stake, or sometimes they can lose other things in their lives because of that, or they can be put into prisons, and on and on. So and look at that, the way the mindset of the earlier Muslims was, that this was expected from the subject, this was expected from the ummah, that if we are on the wrong path, correct us. Don't just leave it like that, that we are following the wrong path and you just obey. Okay, so that was about that. Now, when Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu an, when he became the Khalifa, Khalifa Rasul, one of the biggest challenge that he faced, of course, after the death of Rasulullah, even the burial of Rasulullah, that itself was a huge challenge. Now, after that, the Rasulullah, before he passed away, he prepared the army of the Muslims to go and fight against the Romans. And Usama bin Zayd, radiallahu an, the son of Zayd bin al-Harith, who was martyred in the Mota, the Battle of Mota. And the Rasulullah, that was against the Romans as well. Now, we talked about this, I believe, last week or so. Not last week, actually, it was a different session, but a couple of weeks ago in here as well. That was about 3,000 Muslims were fighting against about 200,000 Romans. Now, in that battle, Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anh, was able to brought the Muslim army safely back, but it was not a complete success for either of the armies, neither Muslims nor the Romans. But Zayd bin Harith radiallahu anh, the father of Usama bin Zayd, he was martyred in that battlefield. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prepared an army under the leadership of Usama bin Zayd, and he was instructed to go fight at the same location where Usama bin Zayd, Zayd bin al-Harith was martyred. Now, the issue here for Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh became, it was actually a multifaceted problem. One issue was there was most of the Arabian Peninsula, the outside Arabian Peninsula people, they were actually rejecting Islam, except the very few areas, and that created a big problem for the Islamic State at that time. Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh was a Khalifa at that time, and now on top of it, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded to send the army under the leadership of Usama bin Zayd. So we'll talk about that whole issue of the apostasy that was happening at that time in the later talks. But today, I want to talk about the issue of Usama bin Zayd being the leader as elected, because the issue was, besides all the other issues were happening around Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, the one issue was Usama bin Zayd was very young, and he was given the leadership of an army of the Muslims that had Sahaba, like even Abu Bakr and Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, like Sahaba like them, were under the leadership of Usama bin Zayd. Now, Abu Bakr, of course, he became the Khalifa now, and the Sahaba, they already showed some sort of issue about this, that Usama bin Zayd was given the leadership. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually told them that this is not the first time that you are disagreeing about the leadership of Usama. You did the same thing about his father as well. Now, when Rasulullah passed away and Usama bin Zayd radiallahu an was supposed to lead the army out, this issue was becoming a little bit problematic. Sahaba were clear about this, that this is a command from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now they have to follow that, but at the same time, there were some issues about the age of Usama bin Zayd. Usama bin Zayd, according to different reports, one of them talks about that he was 17, others says 18, or one of them talks about 20. Whatever the number was, 17, 18, or 20, it's a very young age for an army to be led by a person. Of course, but Rasulullah ﷺ was very well aware of the leadership of Usama bin Zayd. One. Second, this is the way that you build the leaders as well, that they have to act to gain the leadership qualities as well, or to practice the leadership qualities that you have. So that's what Rasulullah ﷺ did. Now, Abu Bakr, when he saw this situation was a bit difficult, so he followed the simple principle, which is in the Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that أَتَأْمَرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. That why do you advise or command others, that you advise the other, but you do not apply on yourself. Or when Allah Azza wa Jalla says in another place, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, lima taquluna ma la taf'alun, that, or you who believe, why do you say what you don't do? Kabura maqtan inda Allahi an taqulu ma la taf'alun, that it is very hateful to Allah Azza wa Jalla that you say something but you don't act accordingly. So when Abu Bakr came across this problem, so the way Abu Bakr solved this was, one of the things was he showed it by his actions were actually, his talk was accompanied by his actions. So there was no disagreement, there's no contradiction between his actions and his words. So the way he did was, first of all, he made sure that along the army of Usama bin Zayd, okay, so when he started walking with Usama bin Zayd, he made sure Usama is the one who is leading the army. So when he's leading Mount Army, and not only that, Usama bin Zayd was actually mounted on his ride, while Abu Bakr was walking like the rest of the Sahaba were walking around him. And Usama bin Zayd, he really wanted that to Abu Bakr to get on the ride as well, but Abu Bakr did not follow his suggestion, because he wanted to show to the people that he is the leader. Usama bin Zayd was the leader of the army, and hence he showed it by action, by him walking humbly next to him. Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh was over 60 years old at that time, but he is walking, and one who is 17 or 20 years old, young man, he is riding and leading the army. So that so he showed it by his actions that who is the one who's leading. That's one thing. Second thing he did was, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, there were very difficult situations that he was going through in Medina, as I mentioned, and we'll talk about next week more in detail. But what he did was, he wanted Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh to stay in Medina as an advisor, but because he was supposed to go along with the army, so now as a Khalifa he could have just ordered Usama bin Zayd to leave Umar bin Khattab here. But what Abu Bakr did, he requested Usama bin Zayd that to allow Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh to stay behind, so he can use him as an advisor in the absence of many of the Sahaba, and the situations were getting tougher and tougher. So that was that these two actions actually made sure and made it very strongly understood by the Sahaba around Usama bin Zayd that he is the leader. He's the leader picked by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his obedience is a must, and he should be followed as the leader. So these are the few things that we said we want to talk about today, inshallah. Just to summarize what we talked about today, and then I'll take the questions and answers. So we'll go into question and answer session, and if there's any questions or comments, inshallah. But the things that we talked about is a pledge of allegiance, a bay'ah, to choose a leader. This is a must, and this is very unique than any other system, because in this bay'ah, it is about giving your pledge of allegiance to the leader to rule by Islam. That's what the bay'ah is, nothing else. And the source of legislation during Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, as we talked about, was very clearly the Quran and the Sunnah, and the law of the land became the law of Islam, which was through in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It continued on, and the Khalifah of Abu Bakr was also the Quran and Sunnah. And then we talked about a bit about the obedience of the ruler. Islam expects us to obey the rulers who are implementing the rule of Allah Azza wa Jal, but this obedience is as long as the ruler is obeying the commands of Allah and His Messenger. If he disobeys, then there is no obedience, and he should be reminded of, he should be advised of to come back to the rule of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if he makes any kind of mistakes. And this is the job of the citizens also, to hold their rulers accountable for their actions. And whoever becomes the ruler in Islam, like Abu Bakr became the ruler, he showed his actions were along with whatever he was preaching as well. So when we talked about the example of the army of Usama bin Zayd, we see that how Abu Bakr showed his actions were along with his speech, not just he's doing the speech and he's acting something differently. So inshallah we'll stop here, and if there is any questions or comments about the subject, that covered today. Inshallah, I'll try to answer if I can. Okay.
And the microphones are on mute, so if you want to. Go ahead, Brother Ahmed. You have a question?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, awesome. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You mentioned